No
And
problem.
yeah, I would like to ask you, how did you start with teaching English, and how it was this move to the football industry?
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching English, I think, about 12 years. I started in London. I used to live in London. I started there, and I think it was just something to help me travel a little bit. I'm originally from Australia, and I've taught a little bit in Australia and, like I said, England. And more recently, I've been living in France, and I was teaching in France, and I arrived here just before COVID happened, and I was working in a school here. But then when COVID happened, the school shut down, and everything was online. I was working on their platform online, and I sort of thought to myself, if I'm going to work online, I don't really need the school anymore. Like you need the school when you're working, in a classroom. You need the classroom and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working online, I was using my computer, I was using my equipment and everything. It didn't make any sense. So I started teaching online, just privately, just for myself, just general English to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. And then over time, I learned a little bit more about sort of advertising yourself and the idea of teaching specifically to a niche. And I think I just sort of one day just kind of randomly chose football. It's not, it wasn't like, oh, my great passion that I want to explore through English
Uh-huh.
or anything. It was just, I just thought it would be a good and interesting sort of niche. So I picked it, and yeah, I've just been doing that for about 2 years now, really. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And how it was, because sometimes football is like a close industry. I mean, it's difficult to get it in. I don't know if it was difficult for you as well, like to, as a not footballer or related with football, like to get into the business, like helping people in the industry.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think I'm still sort of on the outside of it a little bit. I've worked with quite a lot of coaches and analysts now, and I've definitely made progress in that area. But it's definitely a bit of like a closed community, and then they can sort of tell that you're not one of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're not really one of us. And I think, it does. I think it's particularly in the early days that it was very difficult to sort of get like the first students and tell them, look, I can help you with your problems. Like I really can. Like I'm not just lying to you. I'm not just saying I can do it, but I actually can do it. And I think it did take a bit of time. And like I said, that there's still that resistance, and I think that resistance will sort of always be there, because I'm not a former player. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
former coach. I'm just a fan who likes football, and I teach English, and I've mixed them together. I've never had a career in football, so I think that's always sort of there. But yeah, slowly but surely making headway on that
Yeah, that's
area.
cool. That's cool. And your students, which profile they have? They are professionals. They are people that they have already like a job in another country, or they just want it for them, or
Mm-hmm.
what's the profile of your
Yeah,
students?
mostly. So it's mostly coaches. I've mostly advertised and tried to get coaches' attentions. I also get analysts quite a lot, and a little bit less other people like scouts and technical directors and things like that. Mostly they are currently professionals. Mostly they've had quite good careers, I'd really say, but they usually sort of feel like they're stuck in their country.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've gotten quite far in their country, and then they sort of feel like they either they can't quite get to the top in their country, or they can't find work outside of their country. Because if you go outside, for example, if you're an Italian coach, if you go outside Italy, you probably need to start training in English. You can't use
Mm-hmm.
Italian. And even if you want to stay in Italy, if you're working in one of the top leagues, Serie B or Serie A, you're going to need to work with people in English there as well. So, it's people usually, I'd say, quite far along in their careers who just feel like they need something to get them a little bit further.
Okay, so it's people that is already on the working in football field, and they want like to a little bit more, not to get some more opportunities to move like forward or travel or.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of the time, it's someone, it's a coach with all the licenses. It'll be like a UEFA Pro coach, someone who's got all the licenses and has all the skills and knows what they're doing. But recently I've had a couple of Spanish coaches I was working with who wanted to get out of Spain, and one of them's now working in the MLS, the Major League Soccer, and yeah, that was it. He'd had a good career in Spain, or he had a good career in Spain, and he decided he wanted to go over to the US where there's a bit more opportunity going and try something a bit different, but he just didn't feel he had the confidence in his English, so we got him there, and now he's over there.
That's cool. And I was thinking, because you said you were mainly with coaches and analysts. I don't know, it's something from the beginning that you were looking for this type of students, because I mean, did you get footballers as well, or do you think that footballers is something that they are not like into learning in languages, or I don't know?
I mean, I don't even know if this is really correct. Just when I first decided, my first sort of thought was players probably don't need it as much. They're going to need to understand on the pitch, the training sessions and things like this. But then I also feel if a player is good enough, the club will find a way to get them in, even if their English is not very good. I feel like coaches and analysts and people in the back, that's not the case. You need to have the language skills. I think it's very rare that you can get to a lot of the opportunities and the top jobs, the big jobs, if you don't have English skills, which I think for players might be a problem, but I don't think it's as much of a problem.
You were talking about the profile of your students. When they arrive to you, they have like basics of English. They start from zero. What's usually the level?
It's pretty varied, actually. So I have worked with a couple of people with very, very low level English. It's sort of like they're usually capable of at least some basic communication. If they can't communicate even just the basics, it's not a great idea to jump straight into something as focused. If you can't introduce yourself in English, you can't really, you probably can't handle some of my courses. But as long as someone has the sort of basics down and they can feel comfortable doing a little bit of communication. I've worked with coaches like that who just wanted to get to a point where they could give clear instructions to their players and give some basic instructions and make sure they feel comfortable doing that. But I've also worked with quite a lot who have some very strong levels of English, but they wanted to make it maybe a little more professional, or just really get their confidence up because they knew they were going to try to get a job somewhere else, and just wanted to make sure they really are doing it right. So
usually it's intermediate that they start with intermediate, because and you as well, all your communication is in English. I guess someone like would like to make or to try with you, he need to understand your messages and your point.
I mean, that's kind of it. Yeah, I think a lot of the messaging I put out sort of filters out people who can't, if you can't understand my social media posts and my videos, you probably can't do my course, or any of my courses. But yeah, the ones who have a level good enough to understand it and where the messages sort of resonate with them a bit, they know. And I think, like you said, sort of intermediate, maybe pre-intermediate.
Well, at the end, communication as well is like sort of a filter, no, as well, because it's filter people like if it doesn't have much level, they won't go to another place or to someone else. But if they have a level, it's something like I in my profile I have as well. Like everything is in Spanish because my idea is to help people like with intermediate or beginner, like advanced beginner, to achieve goals in soccer.
Yeah, no, it's exactly it. And I think you should sort of focus on that. I mean, a few times, because I speak French, when I've been working with a coach or someone who speaks a bit of French, sometimes I'll use French to sort of help them a little bit, and then they just start speaking in French, and I think, well, this is not ideal. So I just avoid it now. I don't do anything in any other languages.
And I would like to ask you, because this niche is very specific. Which differences do you think it's like more important between another niches or people or industries?
I think that the number one thing is just the vocabulary and the terminology, because they're like any industry or anything that's as specific as choosing sport or a specific sport like football. There are so many words and phrases that exist really only in this sport. Like they only use them in this sport. They don't use them in other sports, and they definitely don't use them outside of the context of sport. So there's so many just words and phrases and just the terminology they need to know. And if you don't know it, you just can't communicate,
For sure.
You might be able to get some basics around, but if someone else uses these words and phrases, then you just don't know what they're talking about, So that's the big one. After that, I think it kind of depends exactly what your role is. Like with coaches, one of the big things we have to focus on is when you're on the pitch, speaking to the players, giving instructions. This is a very specific type of communication. It's not something you'll do. You'll never speak this way in an office environment. You'll never speak this way if you're working in a restaurant, for example. It's very specific. So there is that. But then I think there is also some commonality between other industries, and that's particularly in just the professional communication. They have to do interviews, they have to speak in meetings and stuff. They need to speak professionally and sound like a professional as well.
So it's kind of no differences between like training or on the pitch and then outside, like this all more professional on interviews or things like this.
Yeah, you sort of got to look at both and really improve and work on both areas.
See, that's interesting, because also, I mean, as you say, it's completely different. No one would communicate at someone in the pitch like you can shout to someone, just like saying something very, very straight.
Yeah, that's it. Well, everything has to be very fast. Everything has to be very, I always use the word efficient. You need to be very efficient with your language there. And if you're working in an office environment, that's not the case. It's very different. Like everything has to be polite and
sure. And as well, I guess all your students, being on this field, they are, I guess, as well very, very, professionals as well, but they have to communicate with professionals. I know it's something as well, like you work with your clients like on confidence, because you might know the words, but then you have to expose and talk in a big room or in small groups in English. I don't know if you work the confidence in some ways.
Yeah, well, confidence is a big part of it. And I think quite a few of the people I've worked with, that's really the main thing they're looking for. They actually can communicate quite well, and the actual English is not so much of a problem. It's more they doubt their English and they think that they're making mistakes and they worry about them. And like a big part of it as well is I try to show them, that you don't necessarily need to have perfect English and perfect grammar all the time to communicate well. And anybody who's a football fan can watch, interviews with someone like Pep Guardiola or Jose Mourinho and see that, these guys have reached the very top of football and they communicate very well in English, but they actually make like a lot of mistakes in English constantly. They don't have a perfect level of English, perfect grasp of English, but it doesn't matter. It's not the point. They communicate.
It's about communication. No? I like to say it's not about perfection. It's about communication. No, it doesn't need to be like perfect. That's also because like sometimes, in general, no, I mean when teaching a language, people as well like very very. I don't know how to say it. Motivated or as well like stuck with grammar. No, grammar could be like a big wall or something very difficult to overcome. I don't know if you as well. I don't know how you treat grammar on lessons, or if you treat it, or how you do it.
So what I do now with the football coaches and the analysts and stuff, I basically ignore grammar. I pretty much just ignore. I think if there are a couple of grammar points that come up that I do occasionally talk about because they cause some confusions. Like just to give an example, the difference between like have to and must, or don't have to and must not. These are, because football coaches use that a lot. You use them for rules. You when you're explaining the rules of a game or something, and if you get them wrong, it can be confusing. But for the most part, I basically think it's really not that important, at least not in this industry. It's a bit different again if you're talking about someone who's a lawyer, for example. Lawyers need very precise language. Everything has to be correct, especially if you're writing a contract, So that's a bit different. But again, with football coaches, analysts, it's as long as you're communicating the message and especially with a bit of confidence and a bit of conviction, I really don't think the grammar is that important. If it's a total mess and no one understands anything, then okay, maybe we need to go back and start again. But broadly speaking, it's just not an issue, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. So and I saw your profile as well. No, you share some interviews of Guardiola, or I don't know, remember now, or Mourinho as well. And when you pay attention, it's like, oh my god, yeah, that's true. Even for someone that it's not English, it's like, I think I could do it better. But no, at the end,
exactly. But you don't. You're right though. Like what you said is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. You don't even notice because they, even though they're making the mistakes, they're so confident and they're so focused on just communicating the message. They just want you to understand what they're saying, and that's all they really care about. And that is all you really need to do. You don't need to have this, King's English or anything like that.
No. That's true. And you've been teaching this niche for two years, no? You say
about 2 years. Yes, I started about 2 years ago. It was a little more open, I think, in the beginning, and then it got very focused on coaches, and now it's sort of open again to sort of anyone in football.
Okay, now it's open again. Okay, that's cool. But I don't know if you could share some stories of players or coaches that you have teach or help that you contribute, or the English contribute to succeed or to have like a better job or better opportunities.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I want to be a little careful with names or anything. I don't want to embarrass anybody. But I think, there was one Spanish coach I was working with named Kevin, who's a really nice guy. And I think I mentioned him before. He was working in Spain, and he'd only worked in Spain, and he's recently started working over in Major League Soccer in Dallas. Another Spanish coach I was with, he had worked in China and Africa, I think. So he'd had a little bit of outside Spain experience, and I think he was happy with it. But in China, I think they're pretty good with translators. So he had like a Spanish to English or a Spanish to some sort of Chinese language translator. But yeah, he's also ended up in America at the moment. So I think that's a big thing. As another analyst I've worked with, he's from Croatia, and he was basically trying to find, well, he's a coach and an analyst, and he's just recently found work in the Saudi Pro League as an analyst as well. And I think, again, if you've noticed, I know it's in Saudi Arabia, but I think English is the main sort of language amongst the technical staff over there. I think the business side, it's probably all Arabic, but I think on the pitch, I think they have a lot of foreign coaches and whatnot. Yeah.
So you said something interesting as well. This about the translator. No, I don't know if there is something like usual to go to a country and to have someone with you, like translating everything. Like, I think Iniesta, when he went to Japan, he didn't learn Japanese, but he has a guy with him all the time, like translating everything. I don't know if for analysts and coaches is something like they can stand for a long time, or it's something like they are okay with this. I don't know if you have any.
I've had sort of mixed stories about it from various coaches. So the Spanish coach that I mentioned before, who worked in China, I remember him saying at least one season he felt the translator he had was really, really good, and she would translate everything he said very well, and it was accurate, he felt, and she would also sort of put in the emotion into it. If he was showing some sort of anger or something, she would show it as well. So he felt like his message was getting through. But I've also heard from others who sort of feel, it's a bit different. Yeah, sometimes you try to say something and you make a big speech, and then the translator says it in 2 or 3 words with no effort or anything. So mixed. I think it probably depends on the quality of the translator.
Yeah. That's sure. And cool. I would like to ask you as well for what I'm about to say. I have a bunch of questions around here, and I forgot what I was about to ask you.
Sorry.
Okay, I see. If you have to give an advice to a coach or to an analyst that would like to move and get better opportunities, what would you say to them? Sorry.
No. The number one thing would be what I said before. If their English is the problem, the number one thing needs to be to build that vocabulary and terminology basis. Again, if you don't, it's the foundation of a language. If you don't have it, you just can't communicate. So that would be number one, really. But I mean, if you're thinking outside of specific English training or language training as well, I think the number one thing in most industries, but I think especially in football, is network. Meet people, talk to people, get as whatever experience you can. This seems to be the common thread amongst all the coaches that I've worked with who are doing very well, is they have a lot of experience and they know a lot of people, and they're well known by those people for their work ethic and things like that. So yeah, definitely that one as well. Networking
and English.
That's it. Yeah.
I will do the two. Okay, that's great. So I don't know if you know, but the name of the podcast is Guiris del Deporte in Spanish.
Yep.
I don't know if you know what does it mean.
No, I don't. I'm sorry. My Spanish is non-existent.
Okay, no, because giri is like a way, like a slang way to say a foreigner or a tourist could be as well.
Oh, okay, I get you.
See, like tourist of the sport, it would be in English. But in your case, I don't know when was the last time that you felt like a giri in your own place. I don't know if it happens to you. Or still happen to you?
Yeah. Well, where I am now, because I live in France, I think I quite often feel like a gilly, a tourist. I think I mentioned before, my French is pretty good, but it's not amazing, and sometimes there's just little cultural differences between France and where I grew up that, sometimes I'm just reminded like, oh, I'm not from here. This is not my home originally. So yeah, no, I often have that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, when you are outside, it's almost like you feel out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, I felt the same. And I would like to ask you as well. It's something like it's not maybe related with football and stuff, but it's something that sometimes with all these artificial intelligence it's coming up. I don't know if you feel like your job is on danger.
I really don't. I really don't. Not in my specific area. The reason is because everybody, or there's a lot of people out there who say like, oh, you can use artificial intelligence to do this, that, and the next thing, and you can use it to create, courses, language courses, and everything. And to be perfectly honest, I've tried using it a lot to do that, and it's really bad. So no, and the other thing is as well, I think probably for you as well, like I think, AI uses the information that is available on the internet. It takes that information. But I think what you and I are doing, focusing on these languages very specific to the sport, this is quite a new thing. So there's not really any information on the internet for the AI to use to sort of
it's copying us. He's using our information to
well, yeah, maybe if we make it really popular, it'll then it'll know what it's doing, and then yeah. But no, not for what I do. It's not something that worries me at the moment. No.
Okay, that's cool. No, I'm not worried about this, but sometimes like I saw some things on internet, like they invent something like a near plugs that translate immediately or something like this. I was like, shit, man, I would have to do something else.
Yeah, no, you hear about those things, but but the thing is, I always think if you just look at Google, like if you type something quite long into Google and get it translated, it's often pretty crap. Like it's not very good, So I think they're further away from this than they often advertise that they are.
Okay. Well, and last question, you said you start like about 2 years ago, and you move from, if I understand properly, as well, like coaches and analysts and football players as well. But I don't know what's your idea for the future. I don't know if you have which plans do you have?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, at the moment, I'm working on some online courses, like video courses that I'll try and get out to the coaches and the analysts and scouts and stuff like that. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, these video courses, because I can only teach so many people at a time, and I'd like to try to reach a few more people, and so that's what I'm working on at the moment. I think after that, I'm not really too sure. Hopefully that goes well first. Then we'll sort of see after that. But I think I've got a few ideas for where this could go, and how I could sort of spread the English of football around a bit more around the world. So that's the plan.
Sure. I mean, you did an amazing job in less than 2 years, no? Like starting your idea, and
it's coming along. It's coming along slowly but surely. Yeah.
Okay. So Matt, that would be everything. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. I enjoyed it, and thanks for having me. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about what I do.